Welcome to Hispanic Biz Success Stories. I'm Homero Galicia. We interview business owners who build businesses to learn from them how they built a successful business. We hope that you're comfortable and ready to hear a wonderful story. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Rick Hernandez from Mustang Express. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for being with us today.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of being here with you.
Thank you. Tell me, what is Mustang Express?
Well, Mustang Express is a truckload carrier. A lot of people call it a transportation company, but we actually provide service. 48 state authority is what the company actually has. One of the things that Mustang Express specializes in is the team service concept that we have, from going from the El Paso market area, going anywhere surrounding the Midwest area of the Indiana state. Anything in that area, we deliver and we pick up and we come right back to El Paso, Texas.
So you use two drivers?
There's two drivers on every truck that we have on the fleet. So we do use the team service concept for all the trucks.
So that means one sleeps while one drives?
Yes, sir. One is asleep while the other one is driving. They just continue driving the 10 hours, resting, taking their nap, their time off in the actual sleeper berth itself at the time. And 10, 11 hours later, they're going ahead and actually swapping out again when they fuel up. So, it's just one of those things that the truck continually moves. And the concept basically to me is just-in-time service for the actual customer itself.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. Well, let me ask you, before you started your business, where did you grow up?
I grew up here in El Paso. I've been born and raised in El Paso, with the exception of the 3 years that I served in the military away from El Paso. But I was born and raised here. I was born at Tigua Hospital, right down the street. I actually grew up in the Pasadena area. My childhood memories are of Pasadena Elementary. I went there from the 4th grade through about the 8th grade when I graduated and went up to Isleta High School. Did my 4 years there at Isleta High School, and I graduated from Isleta. Immediately after that, I went into the military after that.
What branch of the military?
I was in the Army. I was actually 3 years active Army, and I served 3 years active reserve.
And what did you do in the Army?
I was a field artillery man, 13 Bravo. And I remember being all gung-ho and was happy to join the military. But, when you get out there, reality bites you. And it's like, what am I doing here? Out in the cold. I was stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I did my basic training there, as well as my AIT. And it just so happened that I joined the military in October. Well, those are the coldest months to be out there playing at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. The snow, the rain, it was a cold type of situation or environment at that particular moment. I actually was able to graduate top 10% of the cannoneer group that I was in at that moment, or at that time, I should say. From there, I went and did my 3 years at Fort Carson, Colorado, from one cold area to another cold area. And, I did 3 years there. And, when they leave you out there for 2-3 weeks at a time out in the snow, a lot of people think that it's no big deal. It is a big deal when you have to sleep in the actual compartment of the vehicle itself. It's iron, so you figure
cold.
It is very, very cold.
So what did the military do for you? What did you learn in the military?
You know what? A lot of people that have joined the military have a vision of what they want to be when they get into the military, I believe. I myself knew that I was going to try to exceed and excel at that particular moment. That has really kind of built me from that point to where I am at now, at this present moment. I believe that these are training experiences that I took on early in my life that have helped me build and establish the company, the discipline, the right dress that I want, that I remember to what I implement particularly now as well. The trucks have to be all lined up nice and perfect. Everybody in the shop knows that I want the trailers to be nice and clean every time that they go out, as well as the trucks to be actually ready to go, and they're all in order and in line.
Like information.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Everything that we do at Mustang Express, there's a reason why I do it that way.
Wow.
I guess the pride that I have, I've always wanted to, first impressions are lasting impressions if anybody was to go in there, and to this day, that's the way it works. I was thinking about making up the bed, doing things that I do still to this day at home. I do make up the bed, and I do that every day. So when my wife makes up the bed, it's not and she doesn't do it the way I was initially. She trained me for it. I get on her. I said, "Hey, come on, let's get this right." She said, "You taught me how to do this."
So tell me about your parents, your mother and your father. What did your father do?
My dad is retired now. My dad did about 38 years. My dad is a truck driver, or was a truck driver. He worked early on. I remember a company here in El Paso called ICX. That's what I remember my dad first driving a truck. Then he went to go work for a company called Whitfield, Consolidated Freightways, Pacific Intermountain Express, which was known here as PI. And he finally retired with a company by the name of ABF. In total, he worked about 38 years in the trucking industry as well.
Wow. And your mother?
My mom was a homemaker. She would go out there from time to time and work. One of the last jobs that she did work was for a dentist here that took care and specialized in children. And she happened to help the dentist open up his business and his practice.
Yeah. You just lost your mom.
Yes, I did. I lost my mom October. I'm sure everybody that has lost a loved one, it's tough on them. It's very, very tough, I guess. With myself, I'm the firstborn. She was always there for me, as well as my siblings as well. But when I lost my mom, it was a dramatic impact for myself as well as the family.
How old was she?
My mom was 73 years old. She was shy roughly about a month of her 74th birthday.
I'll be. Brothers and sisters, how many?
I have one sister, Aurora. She's a year behind me. I have a brother by the name of Manny Hernandez. He works for El Paso Electric. He's been there many, many years as well, and he's in the actual HR department, and he's doing labor relations with El Paso Electric. The brother that follows him is David. David's an over-the-road driver also as well for UPS. What can Brown do for you, right, is what he's always telling me. So, and then my youngest brother, Steve, he's with United Airlines. He was part of the Continental team here in El Paso, and just recently relocated to San Francisco.
Oh. So, what did you learn from your mother?
My mom, my mom had always said, if you don't have anything good to say about anybody, don't say it. But you know what? My mom didn't have to say very much. She would tell you what she wanted you to do, and she expected you to do it. I remember one time getting myself into trouble before I graduated from high school. And the vice principal told me, you need to bring your mother in. You need to bring your parents in. So when my dad works, he goes, well, bring your mom in. You can't come to school unless you bring your mother back. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, I went and told her I needed her to go to school with me. She went, and she wasn't very happy. But as she gets there and she hears what I've done, and she says, I'll take care of it at home. She tells the vice principal that. As I'm walking down the hall, she's talking to me. And one of the things that she tells me is, this is going to be the first and the last time that I come to this school to bail you out on anything. Next time, you're going to have to bring your father. And I don't care what time of day it is, you're going to have to bring your dad. And you deal with your dad then. So it was like, yes, ma'am. But my mom was a very caring person. Like I said, it was always about her family. I had never heard my mom say anything negative about anybody. Never had I heard that. And in talking after she passed away, there were several people that came up to us and said the same thing. And that's what we all knew. That was my mom. She never said anything negative. My wife to this day remembers, and we look up to my mom all the time.
Oh. And your dad, what's he like?
My dad, back in the early days, he was a disciplinarian. So, he was, you do it his way or get out of the way and, let's do this. As the years have evolved, I've seen the transformation, of course, of being the father to having his kids, to the kids having kids, and now those kids having kids. And he's become a softie, and, I believe that I'm following the same shoes that he is. My dad was a hard worker, always provided. My dad actually raised not only my brothers and my sister, but also raised 4 other children that belonged to my sister. My sister is mentally ill, but my dad and my mom took it upon themselves to do this, and my hat's off to them.
Wow! So you had a house full.
There was a house full. Like I said, by the time that I left the house, several years later, is when they decided to take this on.
Okay. And your grandfather also was a truck driver.
My grandfather was a truck driver also. He did 38 years with the trucking company here in El Paso by the name of Santa Fe Trails. And, to this day, I can always remember my grandfather telling me stories about the trucks and the drivers and how he would at times have an issue with whatever he was going through, encountering on any given night. But, I had a very good relationship with my grandfather also as well. I am a 3rd-generation truck driver.
Wow.
So, I can remember all the stories my grandfather used to say.
So you came back from the military.
Yes, sir.
And what do you do?
I come back from the military and I was 21 years old. What am I going to do? I turn around and, I start looking for a job right away. Because by this time, Laura and I already had our 2 kids.
Oh, you're already married?
I was already married. I was married back in 1978. And I enlisted on October the 5th. I got married to Laura October the 21st. October the 23rd, I was en route to boot camp.
Wow.
So, those are some things that I remember. I came back from the military, and I landed a job with a company called Sun City Warehouse back in the day. A gentleman by the name of Wayne Porter, to this day I see him from time to time. He gave me an opportunity, hired me, and learned a little bit of everything on the warehousing side, as well as helping load up trucks, the trailers, offloading boxcars. It was a hard job, but I was young and I didn't know any better. So let's get to work, and that's all what I've always done. I befriended a lot of people in the trucking industry as I was young, especially the drivers that would come in, and they would find out who my grandfather and my father were, and we would just talk about their experiences on a daily basis as well. So that's how I got into the warehousing segment of it. From there on, one day I went and I applied, and with Santa Fe Trails also. My grandfather had already retired about a year and a half before that, 2 years. And the terminal manager, I went in up to him and asked him if he needed any help. I was willing and ready to work. He pretty much told me that there was no opportunities at that particular moment. So I said, okay, well, thank you very much. If you could keep my application available, and if you do need some help, could you please call me? This gentleman's name is Bill White. Mr. White was the terminal manager for Santa Fe Trails. Well, Mr. White gave me an opportunity immediately after he found out who I was related to. And he had a couple of choice words that he used on that particular day when he found out, because as I was walking out the door, one of the guys that I helped load up the product on a daily basis for him, his name is Turi Corral. And Art Corral and I became very good friends. And as he saw me walking away from the facility, he called me back, says, hey, did he give you an opportunity? I said, well, he says there's no room for anybody at this present moment. And he turns around, he says, come on over here. Come on, let's go talk to him really quick. So Turi Coral actually introduced me to Mr. White again, and that's where it started. I had my first opportunity of working that May of 1983.
Now you already had your license,
Yes, one of the things I did is I already had a license, and I knew that I was going to capitalize on every opportunity I possibly could. And that's one of the things that I did is when I drove the truck from Fort Carson, Colorado to El Paso, I went ahead and used that same truck to get my CDL at that particular time.
Okay.
Before I even got out of the military. And that way I could actually say, hey, I do have the CDL license or the Class A license at that time.
So you come from a trucking family.
Yes, sir.
Is trucking in your blood?
It is definitely in my blood. Laura has always said that diesel runs through my veins, is what she says. And, I do believe that, once you get trucking into your system, it's very hard to get away from it. Any type of logistics.
So you're a driver. So for how many years did you drive?
I drove for about 3.5, 4 years, from May of '83 through the latter part of '86. I drove for Santa Fe Trails. I drove for Consolidated Freightways, Roadway Express, Yellow Freight, A&R, Leeway Motor Freight. And one of the things that happened is that I was a casual driver. So when you're a casual, you have to go and work for you have to work for a couple of trucking companies if you want to make a decent living, due to the sheer fact that you're not a regular and you are not guaranteed 40 hours or much less 8 hours. So one of the things that I did is I went to go work for several trucking companies as a casual. And I would go in at 5 o'clock in the morning, get off whatever hour it was, and go work for somebody else 8 hours later. And, I had to do what I had to do to put food on the table. And I did that for 3.5 years, till, I stopped driving. But I've learned a lot in driving the truck and dealing with the customers and talking to the shipping and receiving guys in the back. And never forget where you came from.
So what'd you do? You've been driving for 3 years. You're in your mid-20s by that time?
I was in my mid-20s by that time.
Did you already have a family?
I already had the family. As I said, Joshua was probably about 5 years old. Marilena was 4. And the family, we had just bought our starter home by working all these jobs that I had to do to make ends meet. You have to do what you have to do. I learned early on that.
So how many children do you have now?
I have 3 kids now.
Okay.
Joshua's will be 36 in May. Maria Elena will be 35 in May. And Hillary is 25 years old.
Wow, fantastic. And it's a family business, right?
Yes, sir.
So they're involved in the business? Or?
At one time or another, all 3 kids have worked for Mustang Express. The girls were troopers when we first started out the business. We didn't have an office, so once we did have a little office, they took it upon themselves to go out in there and clean twice a week for me. Clean the bathroom, sweep, mop, whatever it took, they wanted to do that. My youngest one was the one that did a lot of the legwork when it came down to reports and stuff like that when she was younger, before she actually went off to college, Hillary. And she actually did, some audits, passed with flying colors some of the audits that we had through the IFTA, that pays taxes through each individual state. She took care of that and accounted for all the miles that we ran in every state, as well as the amount of gallons that we put of diesel in every state. Mariana has worked a little bit with me also as well, but not as much. She's more of the homemaker. She enjoys that. Joshua is the one that has been with me basically the entire time, with the exception of 6 months. Joshua was accepted actually into medical school, and when he left for 6 months. After about 6 months, he calls his mom and tells his mom, "Hey, do you think that I can come back home? This isn't cutting it, and I miss the trucking side of my job." So he actually came back to to work for Mustang Express.
Wow. Okay, so you driving a truck for 3 years, and then what happens?
You know, working the 3 years, I always wanted to excel at driving the truck, but I knew that I wanted something else in my life. And I took a couple of steps back to try to propel my career forward. I actually went to go and start working for a company by the name of A&R Freight Systems here in El Paso. They gave me an opportunity of becoming a supervisor trainee, getting into management. And that's one of the stepping stones that I took from working in the warehouse, driving the truck, to now becoming a supervisor trainee. Going to the next level is what I had at the back of my mind. I took a $12,000 loss per year, but that was something that I felt that I had to do to try to move myself forward.
So you had a strategy?
I didn't know that's what it's called, but I guess that's what it was. I had a strategy of what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wanted to climb the ladder.
So how long were you this supervisor trainee?
I was a supervisor trainee for about 6 months. Then I became a supervisor, lasted another 6 months to a year. I became the terminal manager. I was one of the youngest terminal managers in El Paso at that particular time. But I knew that, you know, you either are an operator or you like the sales side of it. And I really enjoyed, you know, I missed dealing with the shipping clerks and the receiving clerks. So I opted to ask for an opportunity of getting into sales. I can remember asking, and they pretty much said, sure. Well, they made me take a test, and this test proved that I was not a very good sales rep. So I said, okay, well, my wife always telling me, you never listen to what these people say. That's just a test. And so we kept on, you know, trying to get into and become a sales rep. And, you know, this lady, and I got a new manager at A&R Freight System, and her name is Nancy Lively. And she gave me an opportunity of going into sales. And, you know, who would have ever thought that, you know, the steps that I took would lead me to get into the sales area of A&R Freight System. The thing was that trucking company, after about 6 months, there was a change of operation, and the actual company shut down the central region. And so I fell under the central region, so the trucking company shut down their operation here in El Paso.
After you'd invested some time in it.
After I invested some time, but, you know, like I said, there was a stepping stone, I think. After that, I went to go work for a company by the name of Merchants Fast Motor Lines. They were one of the largest intrastate carriers in the state of Texas. And I went to work for them as a sales rep. Well, you know, my name started being known by other individuals that were in the sales area. And somehow or another, about a year later, I get a call. A gentleman by the name of Tony Wesser. Mr. Tony Wesser gave me an opportunity, or not the opportunity, but he asked me to come work for him. And that was Central Freight Lines. And Central Freight Lines was the largest intrastate carrier. I don't know if he hired me because he wanted to have the bragging rights that he had the best sales rep in the state of Texas. That's what he's told me from time to time. But you know, he kind of cultivated me, and you know, when you take care of people, they blossom. I think I really blossomed under his direction. He really helped me get to the next level.
So you really became good in sales.
Yes, sir. And that's what we always say. You know, what happened to that gentleman that said that I wasn't good for sales? You know, I lasted roughly around 8 years total with Central Freight Lines. I started out as an account manager, worked my way up, worked hard. I was proud to say that I was one of the first guys to actually get a sales bonus from Central Freight Lines in the day. They were a magnificent carrier. The largest intrastate carrier at that time was Central Freight Lines, and I learned a lot from that company and from the guidance and directions of several of the regional managers. And in ending, and when I did leave Central Freight Lines back in '98, I was a senior account manager. That was the furthest I could actually go at that particular time in the sales, unless I wanted to move on out of El Paso.
So you've been training all this time.
Yes. That's how, now that I look back on it, these are all little steps that I've taken to get from when I first started to my military my military career, as well as even further than that. But these are all stepping stones, and I've just been given an opportunity, and the opportunity has really worked for me.
Was that all planned?
Now that I look back on it, I really believe that some of it was planned deep down inside. I knew I wanted to do something. I just didn't know exactly what direction life was going to take me. Do I take the left-hand road or do I take the right-hand road? When you come to that fork in the road, which direction do you go into? And that's one of the things that, I have always said, that these have all definitely been a stepping stone for me to get me from where I started to where I am in any given time of my life.
So you have success in these situations that you get into, the training position and then into sales, the terminal manager. So you were having success. You would learn something and master it, I guess you'd say, and have success at it all the way through. So was that a drive that you had or just an interest that you had?
I believe it's a drive that I have always had. I can remember finding a bunch of newspapers under my grandmother's next door neighbor's house. And they were just there. They were remember the El Paso Times and the Herald Post, right? And I guess the delivery guy just threw 10 extra newspapers and left them there underneath that tree. What did I do? I must have been about 5 or 6 years old. I go and get all those newspapers, and I go to my grandparents' neighbors, and I sell them for a dime. Those are the type of things that I can remember. There's always something that I wanted to do. These are learning experiences.
So some of that was in you.
It has. I can remember, I was telling somebody that I remember taking my dad's sodas. Remember those big sodas, and you could turn around and actually sell them to the convenience store down the street and get your 25 cents for returning
the bottles.
The bottles, the glass bottles.
Okay. So you had sales in your blood, or transforming an opportunity into bringing some cash in.
I guess we liked money since a very early age, right?
Wow. Well, that's interesting. But what's interesting is that you were developing your skill level as you went through things, but part of your skill level was to master that job.
Yes, it was.
But you had a larger intent.
The larger intent is always wanting to succeed and be the best that I could ever be at any job that I had, that I was given the opportunity of doing.
Fantastic. Well, we're finishing segment 1 of our interview. Got to get ready for segment 2 sometime. But I appreciate, Mr. Hernandez, I appreciate you sharing your story. It's a fascinating story, and there's more to it. And we thank you, viewers, for watching, and ask you to stay tuned for segment 2 of this interview with Mr. Rick Hernandez of Mustang Express. Thank you for watching.